And if a person is a ruler and denies that the Islamic law applies in his kingdom or his state, that person is a kafir and is not a Muslim. He's openly denied what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the source of law for the world, that to Allah alone belongs al-hukm, the rule. Allah himself is the Shari'ah, the revealer of the law, and no human being has the right to take Allah's right of hukm, or rule. But if the ruler, for example, accepts the Islamic law as binding, but ignores the law out of ignorance or stupidity or whatever saying, that person is a kafir of the lesser degree. Kufr dun kufr. Because he says, I'm a Muslim and therefore I must rule by the Islamic law, but he does not do so, or he does not do it completely. And that person has committed the lesser kufr, which means he's still a Muslim, but he is a very sinful Muslim. The difference in the two is very important, because the ruler who denies the legitimacy of the Islamic law and says, for example, this is 1998, we don't rule by 1,000-year-old concepts of law, that person is not a Muslim. He has no right to rule the country. He must be removed by force, if possible. But the ruler who says the Islamic law applies in my country, but fails to implement it fully, he must be reminded. He must be criticized for his action. And it is the ulama's responsibility to let the Muslims know that the ruler is committing a mistake. But in this case, the ruler should not be removed, if possible, to avoid fitna or civil war and unrest in the country, which would lead to the bloodshed of innocent blood. But there are laws dealing with that, which we'll get to a little bit more specifically, inshallah. Anyway, the point here is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called ruling by any other law besides the Islamic law kufr. And the least thing you could say was the person who ruled by such a law, a non-Islamic law, is a lesser kafir. In other words, an extremely sinful Muslim, rather than the greater kafir, which is the person who is outside of the religion of Islam completely. That's the least thing that can be said about such a person. Islamic civilization has been established on the law of Allah, on the Shari'ah, since its beginning. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ established the civilization of Arabia firmly on Allah's scripture and on the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The Khulafa Rashidun after him established the state firmly on the justice and firm rule of Islam. And even after that time, when rulers became king, and they were sinful, and they broke laws of Islam themselves, yet the state remained firmly grounded on Islamic law. The people were taught Islamic law, they were judged according to Islamic law throughout all history. No one conceived of the ulama that a time would come when the Muslims and the Muslim nations would reject the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so greatly as they have. And therefore, when they discuss these matters of kufr and iman, kufr, dun kufr, or lesser kufr and greater kufr, they're not referring to the conditions in which the whole system of the state has been taken from the unbeliever. The whole system of education, the entire rule of government, all the ways in which we deal with Muslims and non-Muslims, with our local government, internal affairs, and foreign or external policy, all of which have been taken from the unbelievers, all of which are done for the sake of pleasing the unbeliever. None of these things were considered when the ulama in the ancient times were talking about this subject of ruling by Allah's book. In no way did they conceive that someone would claim that a ruler who based his laws totally on European or American concepts, who totally submitted to whatever he was commanded by the outside forces, who brought in all manner of sinful concepts, atheistic concepts, and taught them in the universities, who allowed sexual sins to be committed openly, who brought television and cinemas with disgusting behavior exhibited to people in the country. Nobody ever conceived that such a ruler would come about. And therefore, when they are speaking about the ruler who believes in the Shari'ah but does not fully implement it, they're not talking about that kind of person. This is a person who in all of his words and deeds exhibits his contempt for Allah's law. And let me reiterate that any ruler who says Islamic law doesn't apply in any one case is a kafir and not a Muslim. And no scholar in all of Islamic history has ever claimed that someone who denied even one law of Islam knowingly is an unbeliever. Is a believer. No one who denies any one part of Islamic law is a believer, if that is done knowingly. What about when they deny any application whatsoever of the Sharia in any part of life except maybe the most private aspects of worship and maybe family laws? What about when the laws of adultery are changed? So virtually every law of every Islamic country except one or two countries, adultery is a crime punished by fines, which is usually, for example, in the laws of Egypt and Syria, for example, not to single those two countries out, but it's a crime if a woman does it and not if a man does it. The woman can be in jail, etc., etc. They've changed all the concept of laws, and that Islam applies in areas of crime, that Islam applies to the economy, that Islam applies to the system of justice, that Islam applies to interstate commerce, for example. All those things have been removed. And any country in which when those major aspects of Islamic law, which are recognized by all madhahib and all scholars in all times and places, when those things have been removed, that country is not recognized as an Islamic country, and the system itself is not recognized as an Islamic system by any scholars. So the scholars ruled that these systems are systems of kufr akbar, greater kufr, not lesser kufr. So for example, Muhammad ibn Ibrahim al-Shaykh, great scholar, said, إن من الكفر الأكبر المنتسبين المستبين تنزيل القانون العين منزلة ما نزل به الروح الأمين. Among the examples of kufr akbar, or the greater kufr, the kufr which takes one out of the ummah of Islam, is placing the man-made law, the qanun, in place, which are, he said, is cursed, in place of that which was revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the angel Jibreel. So he clearly said, this is kufr akbar, placing un-Islamic laws in place of Islamic laws. And Islamic laws apply in all situations. For example, even in certain Islamic countries which apply Sharia in many, many different fields, and which boast of their application of the Islamic law, have replaced the laws dealing with interstate commerce and international business and foreign corporations in the country to being that which is acceptable to the Westerners, to America, and to Europe also, and established special courts dealing with any international business. So if a foreign company working in that country has a legal dispute, it's not taken to the courts of Sharia, it's taken to the courts set up according to European and American concepts of commercial law. Ibn al-Qayyim said, the correct opinion is that ruling by a law other than the law of Islam includes both types of kufr, akbar and asghar, the major and minor kufr, according to the condition of the ruler himself. If he holds that it is obligatory to rule and govern according to the Islamic law in all situations, and that it is the most just and right law today and yesterday and at any time, then that is kufr asghar if he disobeys it, because he openly believes in it. But if he believes that it's permissible to rule by any other law or to establish any kind of code of law other than the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then this is kufr akbar. This person is not a Muslim. Ibn Taymiyyah said in